Now it's time to shine. When you're walking down that tunnel, if you're not going out there to win, don't go out there. You've been waiting your entire life for this moment. And now that it's here, let's show the world we are prepared. We are prepared for war.
And welcome to the premiere episode of So You Want to Be a Broadcaster. I'm John Mita Perel. It is great to have you with us. Wow, I am honored to be alongside Kristen Pascucci, who has had a storied career in broadcasting. Kristen, after that opening put together by our producer, Angel Martinez, I feel like I'm ready to play and
Right?
bust through a tunnel.
I'm all psyched up, ready to go.
As well you should be. And Kristen, I think when we started this, when you and I sat down and talked about this podcast, we said, you know what, let's try to do something that will impart some knowledge, some wisdom, some, I don't know, direction for about the 38 million people who actually want to enter this business every year. That's an approximate number, but I wish I had this when I was starting, about 32 years ago or so.
Right? I mean, we get the questions, right, John? As far as the what people can do to get started in broadcasting and to have this platform for people to listen to is great.
It is, and we are looking forward to our combined 60 years plus. I say that combined, emphasis on combined. That's a crazy number, but you and I have a combined 60 plus years in the business, and the goal is to provide you with not only wisdom, but maybe some tips about how to open a door. How many times did you hear when you started, boy, it's not what you know, but who you know?
It's true. You just need to reach out to the people that you know, the people that you admire, and ask them the questions that we're going to be asking our guests today, which is how do I walk through the door? How do I make an impact? Um, and listen and take those to heart and follow suit.
Angel, we having audio issues?
I think so.
Angel, can you hear me?
Okay.
Should we just do a 3, 2, 1?
I'm echoing a bit.
We don't want to leave it all in the cage here. It's such an impressive start. It's the snap, crackle, and pop that I hear. Okay. It's such a nice boardroom there too. Here we go.
Guys, I know.
All right, here we go. I'm just going to pick it up after that thought. Is that okay? Can you edit that? Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, you know what? It's a nice roadmap for someone who wants to enter the industry. I feel like, again, when you and I sat down and talked about this, it was there's so much content out there, and it's great that there's a lot of content. Everything's available for everybody, but is there a show? Is there a program that gives you direction on how to be a broadcaster? We're not just talking sports, which is our area of expertise, so to speak. It's also, we'll talk to news broadcasters, we'll talk to meteorologists, we'll talk to people on the radio side, talk show hosts, sports radio, news talk radio, you name it. We want to cover all the bases. Are you ready for that? That seems like a daunting task.
I'm ready. I mean, I can ask some questions, right? Get to people's backgrounds, just like you, Meter. We talked about our own backgrounds and our own journeys, and it's helpful to people to learn how we all got started. And it's not all glamour, right? You've got
No, it
to
is.
work in the trenches first. You've got to, put in your time and your dues. And I think that the information that we're going to be getting from our guests are going to help people make their own timelines and get on the journey to having the career that they want.
Yeah, it's not about us, even though a lot of people say in the industry it is about them, but it's not about us. It is about our guest, and it's about our first guest on the maiden voyage. Boy, the pressure's on now. He's won Kevin Connors, the pride of Ithaca College, but now a star at ESPN. You see him on baseball tonight. You see him on Sports Center. You see him on college football. You see him on college basketball. You see him on play-by-play. There's nothing he can't do. Kevin Connors, welcome to So You Want to Be a Broadcaster.
You can't avoid me, John. Hey, it's great to be with you and Kristen, and I mean this. I'm honored to be your first guest on this program. I think it's a great resource for people who do want to get into the industry, and it's a pleasure to talk with both of you.
Yeah, let's start, Kevin. I appreciate you joining us because you are a busy man. Let's start about how you did get started and where you went out of high school, even. And was this broadcasting career something that you thought of at an early age?
John, back in the halcyon days of the pre-internet, I was someone who loved sports. I was exposed a little bit to TV studio stuff at my high school. But when it became clear that, wait a minute, this could potentially be a career path, I'm not going to play in the NBA, but potentially I could talk about sports for a living. It was like someone had opened up the door to a completely new world to me. And I had the opportunity to play basketball at Ithaca, one of the premier television radio communication schools in the country. It was the perfect marriage for me. And when I got to Ithaca, and I've told this story so many times, people like yourself, we looked up to you. I was a freshman your senior year. I wanted to be John Niederperel. You set the standard for what it took for me to be a certain level. And I mean that sincerely. And so from there, it was, you got to put in the work, and here's what you have to do if you want to get to that level. And sort of off I was on a now 30 plus year journey.
Kristen, I may need a moment here. I'm a little weepy after that sentence.
I know it's tough to be an icon, John.
It's hard. It is hard, but thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Kevin, as a student athlete who wanted to get into broadcasting, and there's so many out there right now, the classroom is just as important as your job on the basketball court in your case. So how did you want to just jump into basketball because you're so versatile now? So is that where you first made that jump, or, how can you help our listeners kind of just guide their own journey?
I tell young people who aspiring broadcasters all the time, you've got to be open to everything. I started out at an independent cable news channel where I was a sports reporter in New Jersey. A year into having that job, Brian Kenny left the station, moved on to ESPN. I moved up and became the lead anchor, sports anchor at the station, where I was for 7.5 years. And Kristen, I was there on September 11th, 2001, where there were no sports to do in the days following September 11th. And so I became a news reporter. And there's some of the most indelible memories that I have, the stories that I was able to tell, the people that allowed me into their lives to tell them. There's some of the most indelible memories I have as a broadcaster. I hosted sports talk shows. I've hosted political talk shows where I spoke with a then senator from Delaware who went on to become the president of the United States once upon a time. About the only thing I haven't done is weather, and it's not because I wasn't willing to be open to it. So in a long-winded way, I knew basketball best, but I love all sports to this day. If you give me an assignment, it's my job and it's my responsibility to dig in and know the content. So I would tell young broadcasters, you may think you want to be a baseball play-by-play guy, and some people would tell you do nothing else. I feel versatility is the most important thing you can have in broadcasting. And so I would say be open to any and every opportunity that comes your way.
Storytelling is completely important in all that you do, whether you're on the desk or out in the field. So honing those skills, just like as you said, is super important. When we have these things called iPhones now, and we can go and record ourselves. What advice would you give to that high schooler, that dreamer like you were, now when you have this great piece of equipment in your hand to try to build their own reel?
You've got a TV studio right here. You know, you've got the ability to record yourself broadcasting a game, starting a podcast, recording yourself doing stand-up TV. You know, when I started in the business as a one-man band, we called it back then. I had a big heavy camera on my shoulder and a big heavy tripod and a bag with my batteries and tapes. This isn't, it's all here now. So take advantage of the technology. I mean, never, ever in the history of this industry has it been so available to so many people. And that's either if you want to do something on a professional platform, or if you just want to try a stand-up, if you want to try a style, you got it right here. There are no excuses. And, you know, to me, it's an unbelievable explosion right now in the industry of the Pat McAfees who have started, they haven't necessarily needed the major networks. They've started their own thing. So it's possible if you want to go that route, take advantage of the technology.
Mm-hmm.
It's outstanding advice, and I've used that many times in my classes at BC. It's a weapon. It's a weapon for students to use this. All of us would have probably killed for it back in the day when we had our Marantz recorders and our big tape recorders and our big cameras, as you just mentioned. But Kevin, if there was one piece of advice a 21-year-old Kevin Connors wished he received, whether it was at Ithaca or someplace else as you ventured off into the business, when you look back on that, can you think of one piece of advice you wish you had received to where you are now?
Oh, there are so many. You know, this is easier said than done sometimes, depending where you are on your journey, but enjoy every step. You know, when you're 22, you want to be on ESPN and you want to be making whatever the salary is you want to be making. And then when you're 50 something like I am, you look back on those days and you say, boy, I really, you know, that was a critical part of my journey. And I don't know that I enjoyed it as much as I did because I was just so laser focused on the destination, not the journey. And that's become somewhat cliche, but boy, it really is kind of true as I look back now on close to 30 years professionally. The piece of advice that I would give people who want to do this is you have got to be prepared and you've got to be willing to work harder than everybody else. Seth Greenberg, who I work with in college basketball, has a great saying, and it's control the controllables. You can't control what your bosses are going to do. You can't control what the audience is going to do. You can't control what your analysts are going to do. You can control the job you do. You can control the level of preparedness you have. I'll give you an example from just this week. Monday night, I was to be in studio doing Major League Baseball updates during a Major League game on ESPN. Not the heaviest lift when it comes to a day at ESPN. It's in the middle of an inning, we might cut in with, hey, this is what's going on in the Yankees game. But I prepare for that, and I did the other night with a ton of notes, so that if we do a cut in, I'm going to have information. Well, guess what happened in Cincinnati? Thunderstorms, torrential rain, the game doesn't happen. We have a 3-hour window. Kev, it's you and Doug Glanville, and we're jumping around from game to game. Now, if I had shown up for work that day with standings and the pitching matchups, could I have gotten by? I probably could have gotten by. I had 5 nuggets for each team that were critical when we were tossing to a game. This is how many games the Pirates are out right now. Nick Gonzalez is on a 13-game hit streak, et cetera, et cetera. One thing I never want to do as a broadcaster is not be prepared. So that's the piece of advice that I would give people. You've got to be willing to outwork everybody, and you have to be prepared for just about any scenario.
Yeah, that information gathering is crazy, especially at a place like ESPN. It's the classic know a little about a lot, Kevin, that we've heard about throughout our careers, and that's I think an emphasis there when you're on the set for 3 hours and you're kind of a man without a net. But the ESPN experience, what has that been like since you left WCBS in New York?
It's been amazing. It's been challenging. It's been everything. And John, when we were at Ithaca, I really truly ESPN wasn't the goal. And I've often tried to think of why. I guess it was because it was like, hey, you know what? Start off in Oshkosh and then jump to Cleveland. And then, boy, one day, if you're lucky, maybe you make it to New York City. And you're Len Berman. You're Warner Wolf. And I got to do that for a little while at WCBS. My career path is nuts. I was at a tiny independent cable station for 7.5 years. I got a call one day. Hey, would you be interested in working at WCBS Radio doing afternoon sports updates? A guy by the name of Kevin Burkhardt is leaving to take the Mets job as the sideline reporter at SNY. Would I want to go to WCBS? Are you kidding me? Of course. 2 months later, I was auditioning to do the morning sports on Channel 2, WCBS TV. I wasn't able to get arrested in the 7.5 years I was sending out tapes to all over the place. And then all of a sudden, the ESPN opportunity came about, and it's changed my life in every way. So what has the ESPN journey been like? I mean, we need a longer podcast. It's been fulfilling. It's been challenging. It's been rewarding. I've gotten to call Major League Baseball games with Alex Rodriguez. I've gotten to call boxing matches. I've gotten to be in studio for college football and college basketball and Major League Baseball. I've covered all-star games. It's been the blessing of a lifetime. It is challenging. There's no question about it, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
With all the relationships that you've built too, Kevin, between athletes and politicians, and people who make the decisions at ESPN or any other network, how would you tell a college student or someone new to keep those relationships, right? Because you're going to need a little tidbit from an athlete, you're going to need your inside info, but you're also going to need those relationships when you would like to move up or switch positions. How do you keep those relationships without it seeming transactional?
Well, I think part of it, Kristen, is being genuine. I think you have to, if you're not genuine, I think that is something that people can see. You use the word network. I mean, you've got to be willing to put time in. I know people in the industry who are amazing at it. I myself probably could be better. It's an art. You've got to be willing to reach out to people and continue relationships. And again, that doesn't mean being anything less than genuine, but you've got to have a network. You've got to have people you can call on. You've got to have people that you can talk to. I have people in my life who I have been able to go to. My wife, as great as she is and as much as she understands ESPN, doesn't understand things at ESPN. So you've got to be able to rely on people who have been in the trenches with you. So I'm in an inartful way of answering your question, Kristen. I think you've got to be willing to stay in contact with people, share experiences with them, and not be afraid. There's a fine line between being a pain in the neck and being a squeaky wheel, and you've got to find that and cultivate relationships with people who could ultimately one day help you out.
Yeah, and the fortunes in the follow-up, right?
There's no question about that. And I tell people all the time, like, everyone wants to do football and basketball. Mm-hmm. Go be someone that knows how to call a lacrosse game, a women's volleyball game, a softball game. And if you can do those things and you maintain a relationship with the gatekeepers to jobs, maybe they say, you know what? Connor's called that that volleyball game, and it went well. And if he can do that, we've got an opening for a college basketball game. Let's give him that opportunity. But if you're not willing to do those things, and if you're not willing to develop and cultivate that network, then maybe those opportunities don't come your way.
I think the word we keep coming back to, Kristen and I, is the grind, Kevin. The grind of the business, the grind of the hours, the grind of the mental grind. Am I going to get this job? What job do I apply to? You know, you talk to someone who works at Fidelity, they'll have no idea what you're talking about. A lot of my friends who are lawyers, I'm sure you go through this whole thing. And we're at a point now where, you know, we're a little distant, but when I was starting out, they had no idea what I was going through. None, zero. So, how did you deal with that? And you just kind of alluded to it a little bit with your wife. How do you deal with the fact that, you know, people don't understand you might be working on weekends until, I don't know, 2 a.m., and then you have to get up the next day at 7 and go do it again. How do you deal with that?
You know, it's not a past tense thing for me. It's a present tense thing for me, John. It's the most challenging part of the job. But I will tell you this, it's also one of the most rewarding parts when, you know, there's a standard that I hold myself to. There certainly is a standard at ESPN. And at 2:30 in the morning, when you're doing a closed sports center and you want to get out of there, but the job's not done, the job's not done. And you got to stick around and you got to do it. That's the responsibility that we have. And it's one that I take very, very seriously in being at ESPN. But it also comes from within. And I would have that whether I was at ESPN or at the first job that I ever had. And that's something that's got to be inherent to broadcasters. You know, are you willing to be someone who is absolutely willing to stick around late, to put in the hours, to do a long day and wake up and do it again? And the grind is absolutely a real part of the job, but those of us who embrace the grind, it can be a beautiful thing too.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And I think it's the knock on your door thing that I used to hear coming out of Ithaca when I went down to Florida and knocked on the door of news directors trying to get a sports anchor job in Sarasota or Fort Myers. I knew I wanted to go south. That's kind of how I started my journey. Was I successful? No, but I did it. And I think, did you have that moment in your career where you had to, quote, knock on a door and figure out the formula to open that door?
You know, I think it was for me at WCBS TV. I'd been at WCBS Radio, and I got an email out of the blue one day from the then news director at WCBS TV, and she said, "Would you be interested in doing a tryout to do weekend mornings for us? Weekend mornings at the time, Saturday and Sunday mornings." And I auditioned, and I had 7.5 years of experience in TV, so it wasn't anything foreign to me. And the audition went well, and she said, "Hey, would you be interested in starting 2 weeks from tomorrow?" Whatever it was. Would I be interested? Of course. But from there, it was, "Hey, we need someone to do weekend evenings too. Could you do 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then do Saturday nights and then come back and do it Sunday mornings?" The answer was always yes. So there was never a time where I kicked down a door. It was more, I said yes to so much. I still do. I don't want to give anyone an opportunity to say he wasn't willing to do that. And it's also been rewarding to me to try things and succeed and say, "Boy, you can do that." So it was less of a kick down a door and more of a door was cracked open for me. And I pushed it wide open by saying yes, by being willing to do whatever it took. Because I was that guy who was on the periphery of WCBS TV. My God, I was on the periphery, like I said, of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. So to get that opportunity in number one market, I did whatever it took. And thank God I was single at the time, because I never would have wished that on anyone being in a relationship.
That's true. When I started out my career, I started out like you at a small cable station in Cape Cod. And actually, John Butchergross was my sports director.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But I had moved around New England, saw a little crack in the door at Nesson, took it as a PR position doing Red Sox baseball clinics because I figured, you know what? This is where I want to work. let me try to get in, meet some people, and, learn from the broadcasting side as I'm working in PR. You just got to take the leap of faith, right? And just try to meet the people and get involved in any way that you can.
And you never know where an opportunity is going to take you. That's the
Mhm.
bottom line.
How have you navigated the waters of? I hear from a lot of young people. When do I get an agent? Should I get an agent? How
Mm.
do I how do I deal with that? They're all caught up in the agent thing, and I think all of us probably have had agents. I know you do have an agent, and I've had agents, and Kristen's has had agents. But how do you navigate that when you first get started?
It's such a tough question because people want that validation and they want someone with the connections that we've talked about. And you want someone working on your behalf. I know some agents who are great, genuine people who are willing to work for John Meter Perel. And then I know people who are willing to take on as many John Meter Perels as it takes to get a bite from someone. And they're not necessarily looking out for you, the individual. It's more that they're looking out for themselves and you're on the roster. I mean, the industry has changed so much. It really has changed so much since I got into it. I think for me, at the point of the career that I'm at, I think it's helpful to have an agent who might soften the blow from time to time, who might be willing to make asks that I'm not willing to make. I don't know that you need one early in your career. There's no one that's going to be a better advocate for you than you. So it's a tough balance. The validation is important. I've got an agent, someone who believes in me at a time where when you're starting out, not everyone does. But I don't, here's my advice to anyone who's interested. An agent is not the answer. There is no better advocate for you than you. So be willing to be the one who makes those connections. Be willing to be the one that's going to call people on your behalf because no one will work harder for you than you.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's outstanding advice, and that's very well said. Did you have a moment on your journey that we all had where you say, "Boy, I regret this moment," or something that I said, or something that I shouldn't have said, or something that I did on air, or some moment you'd like to have back? Has that moment happened to you?
Oh, in the past week or over the course of the 30 years I've been, I don't
Think
know,
that- Let's.
you know, you want to know the truth? I mean, maybe it was at the time challenging the then senator from Delaware on an issue that I really didn't know a whole lot about. I was 24. This is someone who'd been in politics for 40 years at the time, and the audacity of me to challenge him on some bill, maybe that. We've all had moments, I think, of course, where we say, "Oh, that probably could have gone better." I can't think of I can't think of one at ESPN that sticks out like a sore thumb. And that does not mean that I've been perfect by any stretch, but it's been another P word. It's been prepared. I've really tried in every opportunity that I've been in to be as prepared as possible. Now, again, that does not mean everything's been perfect, but I've tried to know the content of what I'm talking about. When you're talking about a women's basketball game, when I'm not as locked in on women's basketball as I am men's basketball throughout the course of the season, I could show up and not be prepared, or I could do twice the work that I would do for a men's broadcast to make sure I'm in a position to put my analysts in a good position. So I would say, I mean, there probably are more than I would care to admit, but none that stand out so sorely because I've always tried to be prepared for the moment.
I have a question too, as far as being on camera. We have such a support system, right? Your producers, your sports directors, the director, everybody that's involved in the broadcast. You're not separate from them, right? You're a team. So just talk about that relationship. Just because you're the face on the camera doesn't mean that it's just about you.
I couldn't agree more with that statement. In fact, oftentimes though you're the one on camera, it's less about you than other people. Radio, you're a little bit more in control of the content, but TV, directors and producers and camera people and statisticians, research people in studio. No, it's the essence of being on a team, which I think has been, for me as a former athlete. And I say former athlete, I was Division III athlete, and not a very good one, as John would attest to. But
No, you were very good.
I did have that background. It's something that I love, I embrace fully. And I think you can often tell, Kristen, the people who are most willing to embrace the team concept, and the people with the best teams, I think that often shines through. So there's no question. And if I've worked with my share of divas over the years, and they're few and far between when the cream rises to the top, because you have got to be willing to be a team player.
Yeah, the team aspect is so important. It's, I know, and you've experienced that throughout your career at ESPN. A lot of talk in the last week about the layoffs at ESPN, and a lot of that was people behind the scenes. Reportedly, 100 plus people let go, not on camera folks, but folks that have no idea who they are, and it's so important. And good on you, Kristen, for bringing that up. So important to recognize what those people mean in the industry, right, Kevin?
Many of my best friends to this day are people that I have or do still work with, who are not on camera. And they're some of the most important people in my life. And in the context of the situation that's happened here at ESPN and at so many stations across the country, you hurt so badly for all of those people. But I can't say it any better than I just did. Many of my dearest friends are people who I have and do work with, who, quite honestly, many, many more of them are not on camera and behind the camera.
What's the day like for you at ESPN? You talked about it a little bit about how you come in and you have your information, but what's the day like when you sit down and you try to prepare a Sports Center or a Baseball Tonight?
It's get in 4 or 5 hours in advance of the show. If I were doing a Sports Center tonight, I'd have been looking through the games that are going on, the relevant stories, generating ideas for potential lead-ins or segments. It's getting in. I have worked with people over the years who get in an hour and a half before the show and can pull it off. That's not me. I like to get in 5 hours ahead of time, watch games, talk with people about things that are going on, kick ideas around, be willing to listen to ideas on pitches that people make. Again, that's the teamwork part of things. I mean, you don't just show up. I don't just show up when it's game time. I think you've got to be there. You've got to be absorbing all of the stuff that's going on. Hey, I watched what happened in the first inning of the game, as opposed to gotten a shot sheet and read verbatim what was written on there. Every day is different. Everything there that I do is different. My
future broadcaster just emerged.
Football. What's that, John?
I was just sorry to interrupt. Your son in the background, a future broadcaster or no?
Oh man, already hamming it up behind me to get on camera. Every day is different, but for a Sports Center, no. Again, my day starts from when I wake up, checking the phone, what's going on, what's going to be happening that night. Now, I don't work an 18-hour day, but I like to get in plenty of time to sort of, again, be there to prepare and be a part of the show-making process.
What's your best advice for broadcasting style? If someone's going to be in front of the camera, you have to develop that so it's your very own style. But what's your advice to people starting off about that? How to get the news out there, but be genuine and approachable through the screen?
Yeah, Kristen, you have to be authentic. That is the number one thing I tell anybody. I can't be Stephen A. Smith.
Mhm.
And I've got enormous respect for what Stephen A. Smith does, but that's not me. And if I tried to be Stephen A. Smith, I would be a failure. You've got to be you. Um, you've got to be authentic. Um, I'm someone who has a thirst for the history of things or for the storytelling aspect. That's who I am, for better or worse. Some people are bombastic. Some people like to make hot takes. If you're not a hot take person and you try to be, it's going to show. You have to be you. That doesn't mean you can't try other things. And especially people who are very, very young in the industry, just starting out, try new things. Borrow from people you like and respect and want to be like. But if you're going to be, at the end of the day, someone different than who you are, that's going to show through immediately.
Good advice.
I think one of the themes that Kristen and I want to hit on throughout this show is the importance of writing and the journalistic aspect of the job and how you should know how to write. I can't emphasize that enough about how you must be able to spin a you put a sentence together. You don't have to be Stephen King or Harlan Coben or Dan Shaughnessy or you name the sports journalist, but you need to know how to put together a script, how to put together and tell a story. How have you done that throughout your career, Kevin?
John, it's the most critical aspect, in my opinion, of doing a sports center. And um, I don't know that it's been devalued over the years. Um, what I will say is this: me, the best people to ever do the sports center job are the people who can write. John Anderson was an unbelievable writer. He was an unbelievable writer. I think he's one of the best to ever do it. You got to have a personality. You've got to be willing to be nimble and quick-witted. But if you can tell a story in a creative way, an impactful way, in a memorable way, that to me is the stuff that still differentiates the best. How have I been able to do it? A lot of practice. If I get an on-camera opportunity during a sports center, I don't bang it out in 10 minutes. I did one the other night that may or may not have been successful. But darn it, it took me a long time. It started at home for 45 minutes generating ideas. And it went from being a two-person lead-in to a one-person lead-in to different looks in the studio. It's to me, I don't have a secret recipe. I can tell you this: you've got to be willing to put the time in to cut through with your writing, because at the end of the day, I do still think that matters above everything else.
Yeah, no, I think it's an underrated aspect of the business. I think, especially at a place like ESPN, where it's emphasized or it has been emphasized. Did you have it? There was a guy by the name of Al Jaffe who is a huge part of the ESPN success, who's no longer there, but he interviewed everybody. I had an Al Jaffe experience. Did you have an Al Jaffe experience? He was kind of the gatekeeper for ESPN job seekers.
So Al was there when I was hired. I'm assuming he was involved in the process. I did not have a moment where Al and I met one-on-one. I can tell you my experience. So I had, again, I had been in the industry for about 10 years when I got the opportunity at ESPN. And when I had interviewed, it was back in like February. And I had gone up and I had sent out a million tapes, and I had a wealth of experience, an incredible foundation. I had worked at the smallest, I'd worked at the number one market in the country. I had worked at SNY for a little while. I felt at that point, boy, I had a pretty good foundation. And I went up to ESPN and I viewed it as the opportunity of a lifetime. And I think I did well on my audition, but boy, I think I had maybe 6 interviews throughout the course of the day, in addition to putting together a block of a sports center that I did by myself. And I can remember being in the sports center studio at the time and looking up and looking around the studio and saying, I may not get this opportunity, but I know that I've earned it. I know that I belong here at this place. And that wasn't, that sounds arrogant, but it was because I had given it all. I had given everything. It meant more to me than anything in my life to be successful. And I was willing to put in the time. I did. So I can remember looking around, and this isn't an Al Jaffe story, but it was more of I'm here and I think I belong here. And I think I waited like 3-4 months until I got the call. And I got the call one day before I was getting ready to do an update on WCBS radio. My then agent reached out to me and said, "You ready to move to Bristol?" And it was a life-changing call. But again, I keep going back to prepared. I was prepared for the moment. And I said, I'm not going to be able to control whether they hire me, but I've put myself in a position to warrant getting the job.
I think that's really important. There's going to be so many people along the way, right, that are going to, we were talking about it earlier, John, with your friends that were lawyers and working in business. This business is so completely different that you need to be your biggest fan and find that belief in yourself, because there's going to be so many no's. But one no doesn't mean that this career isn't for you.
Kristen, I had an agent one time tell me, you got to change this, you got to change this, you got to change this, or you're never going to make it. I mean, I was in his office, he told me that. If I had followed that advice, I have no idea what my life would be like. I wouldn't have been at ESPN. I never would have met my wife. I never would have had the experiences that I've had. It's such a great point that you bring up. You're going to hear no so much more than you're going to hear yes. You have to have thick skin. You have to be willing to say, you know what? You have to be self-aware. You know, I can't think that I'm going to make the Knicks this season. Those days they were never here, but they certainly passed. You've got to have some self-awareness. But if you believe that you're good at what you do, you've got to believe in yourself, and you've got to be willing to forge ahead when people say no, because you are going to hear no way more than you're going to hear yes.
Yeah, it's called 10,000 No's. I think that might be the title of a podcast. We're not infringing on copyright grounds here, but we've talked a lot. We've used the word experience a lot today. On a lighter note, the Bristol, Connecticut experience. Bristol gets a bad rap. Our colleague Andrew Marchand has worked there and says it's not as bad as people think it is. What's it like for you working and living in the Bristol, Connecticut area?
I love it. You know, people who have a problem with it because it's not New York City and Boston, if that was what your expectation was, I think that you're the problem. It's a wonderful place to live and raise a family. I love this part of Connecticut. I'm from Long Island. I'm from the Northeast. Are the winters tough? Yeah, the winters are tough. Is the spring, summer, fall portion of the calendar amazing? It's amazing. I love living here. I pray to God that I'm fortunate enough to spend the rest of my professional career in this area. I've never really understood the knock on this area. Again, now, you know, there's no pro sports team in this area. But Hartford has nightlife. There's an unbelievable theater there if you're into the arts. Concerts come around. The Yard Goats are nearby, a AA baseball team. We got a lot up here in central Connecticut. I've never really understood the knock on that.
So you're not from the Keith Olbermann school of Bristol's better off in your rearview mirror.
I respect Keith immensely for the broadcaster that he is and the job he did at ESPN. And if that's his perspective, great. It's not mine. I love it here.
That's great that you've had a fantastic experience. Before we let you go,
anybody who's a sports broadcaster, that is a big part of their journey to try to get to ESPN.
Oh, of course. It's the destination moment. Just driving
All right, I think
up.
we lost John. Well, Kevin,
can you hear me?
We appreciate your time and your willingness to share all of your your past experiences, what you're doing now. You're going to help so many up and coming sports broadcasters and broadcasters in general with all the information that you shared with us today. So we can't thank you enough.
Kristen, it's totally my honor. I really, really do mean that. It's great to talk to both of you guys, and anyone that's looking to get into the industry, again, be willing to work, be willing to have a thick skin, and enjoy the process, because it is an unbelievably rewarding business, whether you make it to the network level or you only ever start at an entry-level job. It's a fantastic field, and I wish everyone a ton of luck.
Thank you. We
Kevin,
do too.
thank you.
And we appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Kevin.
Kevin Connors, ESPN.
You were great.
Oh, you were fantastic. Can you guys hear me all right?
Fantastic.
Did you lose me? I don't,
Is that
okay.
Kevin? That was a lot of great information. And you're absolutely right about networking, because the